The number one factor of being a good detective is tenacity. I think I've seen that in almost all of our detectives, that they have this never give up attitude. And once they get a case and sink their teeth into it, almost all of our personnel down on our second floor and some of our other investigative units, they never let it go. They will follow up leads after leads after leads, even when it seems like a dead end. They don't give up, they keep after it, and amazingly solve crimes that I never thought they would. So I think they're all intelligent, they're all hard workers, but there's something about making a great detective is that one that just won't let it go, and they just keep going after it and after it. My name is Pat Rigdon. I'm a Deputy Chief with Colorado Springs Police Department, and I currently oversee our Investigative and Special Operations Bureau. I've been on the department for 26 years and have served in a variety of capacities, certainly patrol, but I've been in the Investigations Division, Special Enforcement Division, and a variety of patrol shifts. So very much enjoyed my time here with CSPD. Yeah, so it's really support function. So it supports patrol, but kind of from a uniformed capacity, or at least from a law enforcement capacity. It's comprised of three divisions: investigations, which might seem self-explanatory, but that has a lot of components to it. Our Metro Vice Narcotics and Intelligence, which used to have a very high focus on narcotics. It's morphed a little bit with a reorganization lately, and now houses our proactive units as well. And then our Specialized Enforcement Division, and that's a very unique component of our department. Things like SWAT, canine, motorcycles, airport security, municipal court security, and it kind of goes on and on. So the Bureau overall is very diverse, has a lot of unique functions and specialized units within it. Investigations Division is really a vital component of the department. It follows up on primarily persons crimes that are felonies. So we have a violent crimes section, focuses on things like felony assaults. Homicides is obviously the one that would come to mind for many people. But a lot of times it's as a result of, can be a result of shootings or some sort of weapon involved, serious bodily injury. So things that are quite serious in nature. But then we also have our Special Victims Unit. We have, sex crimes, things of that nature, crimes against children. But we also have our Forensic Interview Unit, to where we have trained personnel that are actually not sworn personnel that do our victim interviews of children and sensitive nature interviews, those kind of things. Our crime lab is actually housed in our Investigations Division, and that's a regional crime lab, so it services all of El Paso County. Very vital to support all of our investigations units. We have internet crimes against children, and believe it or not, the Colorado Springs Police Department manages that component for the entire state. So we get all the tips from the entire state on child pornography and things like that, and then we manage that, farm those out to other departments. So it is a very diverse unit that's focused on a variety of areas, and I'm proud to say that almost all of our clearance rates for the crimes that are investigated by that division are much above the national average, and that's even with somewhat of a shortage of personnel compared to many other departments. It's very unique. comprised of a really diverse number of units. Some of the really prominent ones that I think people kind of ooh and ah over are certainly our tactical enforcement unit, which is a SWAT team that many other agencies call it their SWAT team. But they respond to critical incidents. Many times if there's armed personnel that have barricaded themselves, our tactical enforcement unit will come out and resolve that situation. And overwhelmingly they do it peacefully. But they're equipped with special equipment and training that they can handle those situations safely, and they can actually keep our officers out of harm's way. And so very valuable. They handle a tremendous amount of deployments every year. I think many people would be surprised that it's over 150 missions per year. The other unit there that actually a lot of people see is very visible is our canine unit. We have 12 canine handlers and dogs. They are integrated very closely with patrol. They handle calls for service, go on many calls for service with patrol officers, and are really that unit that's right out there in the field with our patrol officers supporting them day in and day out. But then they also deploy with our tactical enforcement unit on all of those critical incidents. So that's a very busy unit. And then we have a regional explosives unit, and so they handle, it's a partnership with El Paso County Sheriff's Office. They handle all the explosive calls in actually the south central region of Colorado, so it's not only El Paso County, but it's also Park County, and Teller County, and Chaffee County. So not that they have to go to those areas frequently, but if something does happen there, we respond. So that's a very busy section of our department. Then we also have a patrol support section, which is comprised of our motorcycle unit. We're a little short on staffing there currently, but normally we have 22 motorcycle officers that include our sergeants that are primarily charged with enforcing day in and day out traffic, speeding, red light running, those kind of things. So they're out there on the motorcycles day in and day out. That unit also has, that section of our department also manages all of the special offense from the police side in the city. So if we have a major parade, they work on staffing the parade and work with the parade organizers to make sure that those events are held safely. So that's one other component of that many people actually do overlook is we have a major crash team that's in that section. Major crash team responds to any kind of traffic accident that involves serious bodily injury or a fatality, which is much higher than we want. But they also work very closely with our traffic engineers to help reduce, if we find an intersection that has a high crash rate or serious bodily injury keeps occurring at certain intersections, they work with traffic engineering to resolve any sort of design flaw that may be contributing to those accidents. So again, so kind of components that are very diverse in nature. And then the other section that we have contains a variety of units. There's airport security, so we have a complete cadre of officers that manage the police functions at the airport, and that's where they do all of their uniformed unit, but they work out of the airport and support airport operations. Municipal court security, so we have a fairly unique combination of sworn officers and then what we call civilian marshals that manage courtroom security, prisoner transports to municipal court and back, and just do a variety of functions in that area. And then we also liaison with our Office of Emergency Management. We have an officer there that contributes to that overall effort from the law enforcement perspective, and should we have a natural disaster or something like that, they help manage that. Metro Vice Narcotics and Intelligence, the name by itself tends to lend people to think that they're completely a narcotics unit, and really our model was that they were primarily a narcotics unit for a long time. We've gone through a little bit of a reorganization just here in 2021. But you know, they do focus on narcotics, at least some units do. We have a street team and many undercover officers in that street team that work fairly low-level narcotics dealers, things like that locally. But they, you know, they try to help us reduce crime by taking some of those low-level offenders off the street. We also have a regulatory team, and so they help with not only, it's a little bit marijuana focused, so the regulation of medicinal marijuana, but they also look for illegal marijuana grows. They help to police that and enforce those laws. But they also look at liquor enforcement and some tobacco enforcement and things like that that are regulated. We have a partnership with DEA, so we have officers that are integrated with the Drug Enforcement Agency that work on a lot higher level of narcotics traffickers and do that in an undercover capacity. So that's really kind of the narcotics side of that. The other component that we have, though, is a little bit new and redesigned for us, and that's where we house many of our proactive elements out of our Metro Vice Narcotics and Intelligence Unit. So we have two teams called Strategic Investigations Unit. We have two teams of those officers. They're generally uniformed. So they try to focus on those offenders that are committing the majority of those crimes and victimizing many of our citizens, and really creating some harm in our community. So we're hoping that that's going to be just a tremendously successful program as we go on. I mentioned motor vehicle theft. So we have a unit that we also partner with El Paso County on that investigates motor vehicle thefts countywide. But they also integrate and work closely with that Strategic Investigations Unit on their crimes. We recently moved our robbery investigators to Metro Vice Narcotics and Intelligence because of the proactiveness and nature of their job. You might think that they're just investigators and it's all after the fact, but they also use data and data analysts to figure out who's offending, who's doing the robberies, so they can strategically go after those offenders as well. So we've had some changes. A big part of that, though, is our crime analysis unit. They're housed at Metro VNI, and they do all of or much of our data analysis. They look at crime trends. They give us information on who they think is offending, where those offenders might be operating, those kind of things that give our officers and our detectives some information and some direction on where they can focus their efforts. Yeah, so generally, I don't know if there is an average day for a detective. However, many of the traditional detective units, and those are the ones primarily housed in our investigations division, they have supervisors that intake cases. So when crimes occur, generally the patrol officers go out. They're our first contact with that victim, and they take a case report, do as much investigation as they can on the scene, and then they submit those reports. Our sergeants and our supervisors of our investigations units intake those reports, screen them, figure out who is the best detective and what's the most appropriate unit to handle those cases, and then they assign cases to those detectives. So on a day-to-day basis, detectives get those cases, they review all of the information and start to develop leads of how they can solve that crime. And so they focus their effort with working with our crime analysis unit, you know, doing computer searches, doing search warrants, in an effort to identify suspects in cases and ultimately make an arrest and hopefully bring justice for that victim of that crime. So it's a pretty dynamic assignment. You would think that they spend most of their time at their desk, but they're out interviewing witnesses. If they have a suspect, they might conduct surveillance and eventually bring that person in and interview them in hopes of obtaining a confession. So it's a highly skilled position. It takes a long time to develop, I guess, proficiency in it. And I mentioned before, but I'm super proud of our investigations division and the high solvability and clearance rates that we have. I think they do a fantastic job for our citizens and keep our community safe. You know, I think as a police department, one of the core things that we do is we go out and we work for victims of crime. And our investigations division really does that on a just much higher level. I mean, they really get into that type of work to serve the specific kind of victim that their unit, whether it be sex crimes, homicide, those kind of things, just to work for those victims or the family of those victims. And I think by focusing our efforts on solving some of those serious crimes, it sends a message out to our community that we want to protect them, that we really do work for them, and that we want to keep our community as safe as possible. And so it's just a super important function of our department.